Hello, hello. Talking about living in the middle tonight. Should be fun and exciting. Those of you that have joined me on my chats before, it's always nice to have a notebook handy. I've got my green smoothie here. I've got my water. I've got a little bit of a hot beverage. So I like to have lots of things to drink all surrounding me. Okay, tonight we're talking about living in the middle. So this is an interesting topic that actually came up on one of my group programs, and it was just very interesting. So I've been thinking about it and asking God about it, and I think that this is going to be a really great message. So this revelation came around what is the path to walk in freedom? Because I think that ultimately we can admit that we want to be free. Even if we don't quite understand what that freedom means, freedom resonates with a lot of us, right? But we often think of freedom as an external destination, like somewhere that we're going towards. We have an idea in our head of what our life will look like when we reach freedom. So when we're free, for example, we will no longer, or when we're free, we'll no longer have debt. There's an example. I'll be free when I release this weight. I'll be free when the kids leave the house. I'll be free when I leave this job and do what I really want to do. So there's always this thought of an external destination, but true freedom is really an internal experience. We experience freedom on the inside, and then the outside ramifications of that is external blessing and what I believe is eternal reward. So once I got free inside, then I started to reap the external benefits and blessings in my body. Like things started to manifest that had never manifested before. But it was first me finding freedom within myself. So true freedom is the ability to remain strong and resolute despite what's going on around us. Now, if you're watching this live or within a couple weeks of this being live, we are dealing with the coronavirus right now, and there's a lot of circumstances and situations and things that were completely out of control around. And some people are experiencing peace during this time, which I would consider freedom. And then other people are just getting wrapped up in their external experience of what's going on around them that they can't control. See, freedom isn't taken away because there's disappointment, uncertainty, because there's failure, because there's fear. Freedom is something that we take possession of, and it's not easily taken away. Freedom is life outside of feeling imprisoned or considering yourself imprisoned. So I think that there's two prisons that we live in. And I think that we as women, we sway between these two prisons. And one of them is the prison of hopelessness, or the prison of self-pity, having a pity party for yourself. And this is where our feelings and our desires are our masters. This is where we are shackled to our feelings and to our desires, to our appetites. And basically, this is what keeps us in the prison, is us feeding into our desires and to our feelings. This is where we find ourselves feeling guilt and shame. This is where we find ourselves neglecting ourselves, overindulging, being careless with our journey and our life, being indifferent, procrastinating, or avoiding. This is the place where we do the things that we told ourselves that we were not going to do. Has anybody ever done that? We say, I'm never going to do that again. And actually, not only do we do what we said that we weren't going to do, but we actually kind of like it. Like we actually enjoy it, at least momentarily. We seek to satisfy our appetite to be comfortable. We want to avoid all uncomfortable feelings, so we give in to whatever we're feeling in the moment. Now, I want to say that again because I think that that's where most women struggle in their health journey, is getting through the moments of desiring comfort. And we are so ingrained, and we are so, I'm going to say blessed, but I also think entitled is the word. We are so entitled where we live. in the environment that we live in that we can literally grab anything to make us feel better in the moment. So if there's a feeling that we don't want to think about, that we don't want to touch, if there's a moment of conflict that we don't want to be a part of with our spouse or a person, it is so easy for us to escape. We can escape with a coffee. We can escape with a donut. We can escape with a vending machine. We can escape with a drive-through. We can escape with a cigarette. I mean, we have the means to just so easily escape. And that's what happens in this prison, is that we just keep feeding our appetites and our desires to avoid anything uncomfortable. And I think often women that go on this health journey, especially women that I coach, they think for some reason that it's going to get comfortable to do the uncomfortable. And that's not the way that it works. I don't believe that there's ever a moment where you're like, oh, I actually feel like doing this today. There might be little teeny decisions, but if you want radical change, radical difference in your life, the things that you go to for comfort, it's never going to get easy to not go to those and to do what is uncomfortable or what is unknown, if that makes sense. So our choices offer in this prison of self-pity or hopelessness, our choices offer temporary pleasure just in the moment. And the moment is where we want to live. We want to live in that moment of that comfort, of having that beverage, of having that food. We don't want that moment to ever end. But unfortunately, it does. The moment always passes and leaves us wanting. It leaves us wanting for that next opportunity. And we want another opportunity to have another moment, right? So what happens is our days and our weeks start to be filled with these moments of escape. And we start waiting for the next moment. Oh, when the kids go to bed, I can have my next moment. When work's over, I can have my next moment. When I go out to dinner with my husband tonight, I can have my next moment. So we're always looking for the next moment. And we basically live our lives from moment to moment. Now, the problem with this is that the more we escape in these moments, the deeper we sink into a place that we don't want to be, and a place that's going to be harder to pull ourselves out of. The more we avoid, the more we're going to indulge, because the indulgences is helping us to avoid. And we find that what began as conscious choices, like I'm making a choice to do this, even though I know it's not good for me, it started as a choice that seemed kind of harmless, right? Now we're masters to it. So we're in this prison and we're being mastered by the things that became as choices, but now they feel so overwhelming, like part of who we are, that we don't really know how to reverse it. So often when we are living in this hopelessness, or self-pity, whichever one resonates with you most, our external world begins to deteriorate. So we're escaping from moment to moment, and our health suffers, we gain weight, our relationships become strained and complicated, we isolate ourselves from the people that are good for us. So the people that we used to confide in, the people that we used to allow to encourage us, we're now cutting them off because we know that they're going to try to speak life into us. They know that they're going to call out the craziness that we're in, and we don't really want that. So we start to close off the very vehicles and vessels of hope and the places and people that can actually pull us out of the funk. We actually cut off. This is what can happen in this prison. We avoid anything and anyone that will speak truth, because if we want, and basically because our problems keep getting worse and worse and worse when we're in this place, like everything seems to just be getting worse and we aren't doing anything to make it any better. We literally find ourselves looking for more and more moments, because if we sit down and look at what our life has turned to, or where our weight's at, or where our finances are, it becomes so all-consuming and overwhelming that we're afraid it's just going to spin us deeper. So we continue to just try to avoid. And what happens in this prison is it becomes a full-time job to stay comfortable. Does anyone feel like that, have felt like that in their health journey? It's like it's a full-time job to try to make ourselves feel comfortable. So we're constantly looking for the next snack, the next little indulgence. When can I do this? When can I have my next coffee? And we're just looking for those little moments. Now, what happens sometimes in the Healthy Edge journey is that women will try to stay on the path of health. Like, okay, I'm going to stay on this path, but they try to insert these little things that seem really, really like not a big deal. But what happens is they become consistent. They become what the day gets made around. So it's like, okay, if I can just make it to this and I have my cup of coffee at 1 p.m, if I can just make it to this and then I'm going to have my piece of chocolate. Now, in and of itself, not a big deal. But when they're mastering you, that's the thing. That's not freedom. It's not freedom to be able to have indulgences throughout your day if they are running you and you basically are living your life from that moment to that moment. Okay, same thing with working out. Working out can become part of that thing where it's like, if it is the reason or how you get through your day, and if it doesn't happen, like you are just a hot mess and you are cranky and you are irritable and you are just not a good version of yourself, that can also be something that can show up in this prison. So have you lived in the prison of hopelessness? The hopelessness of never being free, the hopelessness of never losing the weight, of never getting healthy, of just kind of letting yourself go, just kind of throwing your hands up and going, you know what, this is just hopeless. It's just not for me. And basically allowing yourself to spin down into that place. Have you been in a pity party? Have you been self-pity, woe is me, I should be getting more than the results that I've gotten. I should be further along in my journey. I should have more physical outward validation of what I'm doing. People that look around me, you know, like they probably don't even think that I'm on a health journey, like this isn't fair. Those are all things that we would say to ourselves in that prison of hopelessness or in that prison of self-pity. So let's talk about the other prison. The other prison is the prison of self-sustainability. This is where we swing to the other side. So in hopelessness and in self-pity, there's no rules. It's like a free-for-all. We're doing whatever we feel, our flesh is driving us, whatever we desire, whatever we want in the moment, we just give to ourselves. But self-sustainability looks different. This is where we have rules, we have laws, rigid standards, and perfection. These things become our shackles, what we shackle ourselves to. And in this prison, we focus on overriding our appetites, overriding our desire to be comfortable, overriding our flesh, overriding desires. And we do this through motivating ourselves. We're going to motivate ourselves, we're going to have willpower, and we're going to strive. And striving just means trying really hard, right? We're just going to strive, put all of our energy, all of our effort into doing this, into following the laws and following the rules and following the standards. And what happens is that in this prison, it is characterized by achievement. So we are looking for achievement. It is characterized by comparison. It's characterized by competition, by judgment, by systems, by checklists, on anything that focuses on external validation and external destination rather than the moment, rather than what's going on inside, rather than what's underneath what's the pain that's underneath all of these rules and all of this desire to have everything perfect and to have the perfect body. Like, what's underneath that? This prison is all consuming. Just like the prison of hopelessness, it consumes every shred of our energy and our mind. But it also often gets interpreted as freedom because the results can seem to be favorable. So here's how we find ourselves in self-sustainability, ladies. We look around and we see someone that looks amazing, awesome. You're like, I want their body, I want their life, I want their kids, I want their job. I don't even know what they do, but they must do something cool. Like, you look around and you start to interpret outward results as freedom, okay? And usually they're extreme results, like people that look different. They're healthy, they're fit, they've got something that not everybody has, right? But what happens, guys, is we can lose 20, 50, 100 pounds in the prison of self-sustainability. We can do that. It is possible. It's called a diet. Okay. Diet is self-sustainability. We have to will ourselves. We have to strive. We have to motivate ourselves, right, to follow the diet. We can make money in self-sustainability. We can achieve accolades. We can increase our social status, our likes. We can accumulate things. We can attract a lot of attention to ourselves, all in this prison. So it looks to the outside like freedom because it can be interpreted as success. And it's like, wow, this person has a lot. Like they must have an awesome life. They must feel great about themselves. But what happens in self-sustainability is that we get tired. We don't just get tired, we get freaking exhausted. We also get sneaky because perfection is impossible to achieve and it's impossible to maintain, but it is possible to fake. Perfection is possible to fake. So we put on our mask. We walk out and we put on our I have it all together mask. I've got it all together here. My body's all together. My car's all together. My kids are all together. Everything appears to be all together. That's what we do when we're out in the world. But then when we come home and we're behind closed doors, we are who we really are. And who we are, and we have to all agree with, I mean, you don't have to agree with this, but I know this to be true, is that we are all broken and we all are insecure. Like that's the reality of the human nature. And because we're broken and insecure, we give into desires, the overwhelming desire to comfort that reality because we don't want to go inside. We want to be perfect out here. Well, now that we're done being perfect out here and we're so exhausted, when we take the mask off and we see who we really are, we don't want to spend any time there. We're spending all of our energy out here, right? So once it gets real, we actually start to indulge and comfort behind closed doors where nobody can see. This is where eating disorders can get started and perpetuate. This is where drinking, this is where the binge eating, this is where just a lot of crazy, unhealthy behaviors can do. This prison often leads to what is felt to be a double life. I resonate with this prison for sure. Living one way behind closed doors and then another way outside, exhausting. The most exhausted place that I've ever been is living that double life. Now, the prison of self-sustainability, it offers a false promise. And I want you to identify this because my goal is that you become very aware. You become very aware of where you're living and that if you're in one of these two camps, it's a prison. It can feel like freedom sometimes because in the prison of hopelessness, you're doing whatever you want. It's like, I'm doing whatever I want. This is freedom. Freedom is doing whatever you want, right? No, it's not. There's nothing freeing about indulging in whatever you want and then dealing with the ramifications of that. You are imprisoned to the consequences. And the same thing with self-sustainability is that you can think that it's freedom because it looks really good on the outside. But what it takes to maintain that is a prison. So that is the false promise. The false promise is that someday we're going to achieve, if we just stick with it long enough, if we just power through, if we just get enough willpower and enough motivation, we do enough things right and we're perfect long enough and we do enough days in a row that we make no mistakes, right? Then we will find the place where we will be enough, we will be loved, we will be accepted, we will accept ourselves, other people will accept us, we will be in complete control of our lives, we won't be erratic anymore, and we will find that place of peace. Now, this is an illusion. But this is an illusion that is so compelling that many of us visit this prison of self-sustainability every Monday. Every Monday, we decide that this is the money. This is the Monday that we're going to start the journey to get whatever, to lose the weight, to get healthy, to save their marriage, to get their kids straightened out, to get their family healthy, whatever. So we find ourselves revisiting this self-sustainability, getting up the willpower, getting up the internal determination to say, this is it, draw the line in the sand, which usually ends up lasting till about Monday at 10 a.m., right? We also get lured into this prison by indulging in comparison. Good old comparison. We look around and we see people that are in the same prison of self-sustainability, and we believe that they're freer than we are because they look better, because they've got a nicer car, because their butt looks better in yoga pants or whatever. And we decide that because they look freer and they look like they've figured it out, I'm just going to follow their path. So I'm going to figure out what they do. So then you start following the path of somebody else's life. But the problem is that none of us are on the same path. Now, we may be all on a same desired destination, but God does not lead us on the same path. Each one of our lives are unique to us. And what I have found, and God keeps revealing it over and over again with one-on-one clients and group clients, is that although there are some boundaries that a healthy journey is within, contained within, the variation between individuals and their particular path is so unique. And it's just one more evidence that there's a God, in my opinion. What works for one woman becomes striving for another. What works for this woman over here would become an obsession to this woman. And God just knows us because he created us and he wove us together and he wrote out every day of our life and he knows our personalities and how we choose. It's so amazing how he unravels our individual paths. So the more that we look around to the women around us, the people around us, for the path that God has created for us, the longer we are going to halt our progress. I really, really believe that. I was just on a coaching call today and this woman had a revelation around some food that's making her sensitive. And she's like, it's been impressing on me for the last couple of weeks. Now, I would love to tell every one of my clients what she said the Lord was pressing on her. But I can't say that to a client who isn't ready to receive it. I can't tell someone to do something that God has not opened up the path and the power for them to walk into. And I think sometimes, ladies, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're looking at someone else or hearing something and we're just jumping on that wagon without asking God, is this part of my path? Like, what's the next step for me, Lord? What's the next step for my progress? Because for some women, exercise comes first, and then it's food. For other women, it's cutting things out. For other women, it's bringing things in. For some people, it's changing the dynamics in the relationships because that's fueling their desire to eat. So learning how to confront, learning how to communicate can be part of somebody's journey. Somebody else's journey has to do with healing. Healing looks a lot different than somebody who's just on a path to release weight and get some excess, things off of them. So it's so interesting. And I'm saying that to you to build your confidence that you're not missing the system. Okay. There's not something out there that you're missing. And if you just find it and you plug into it, then, it's all going to go. You have your own process. You have your own system, and God has the plan, and he's going to unravel and reveal step by step what you need to take. But if you stay in these prisons, then your masters will be the masters of these prisons. So it's really hard to hear God's voice when you're imprisoned because he lives in freedom. Okay. So I hope that helps. So Jeremiah 29:11, one of my favorite verses on my wall, is, "For I know the plans I have for you, declare the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Now, these things don't just automatically happen. We have to seek. God tells us to seek, to ask, to knock, to pursue. So there's an active part on our part that we need to pursue. It is not in these prisons of self-striving, motivation, willpower, or screw it, I'm just going to do what feels good. Those are not the paths. Those are different masters. Those are different gods. You're going to get different results. Edifying those and saying, like, these are what I'm going to do to get the body that I want, or whatever that looks like. So the truth is that most of us visit these prisons. often. One of them is probably a little bit more familiar than another, but typically we do go back and forth. And it's also true that within one day, you can be drinking your water, completing your workout, doing your salad a day, saying no to the donut that was offered to you, right? Receiving validation and compliments from people around you, patting yourself on the back that you had a great day. And that same evening, you can be cuddled up, binge watching Netflix, not talking to anybody in your family, eating out of a tub of ice cream and drowning it with soda or wine or whatever it is. All in one day. All in one day. You went from self-sustainability and striving and willpower and I got this and yeah, to hopelessness and self-pity. And now you're back here just indulging in comfort and all of that. In both of those places, avoid anything that's going on inside, which is where the real work is done. And it's crazy because most often women do seek out self-sustainability prison. We don't know it because you've never heard it called that probably, but we actually seek it out. We desperately want to find something and someone to compel us to be strong enough, right? We want something to make us want it, to make us do it, to force us to stay on the course so that we can do it long enough to lose the weight. So we look for those things and we get excited about those things, right? We see a new system, a new path, like, oh, you got to take these pills. You got to do, I think I can do that. I think I can do that. Oh, this is going to be so easy. I'm not going to have to think about anything. I'm just going to have to do it. If you ever do anything that you don't have to think about anything, you just have to do it, that is a big red flag. Because you are completely detaching from the place that all of your actions originate, which is inside of you. Everything starts with a thought. So if what you're doing does not address your mind, you are setting yourself up for failure. Like your actions come from thoughts. You don't just act unless, of course, it's a reflex, but like our food choices and our exercise choices, those come from thoughts, and our thoughts come from things that have been experienced, things that have been taught to us, things that have been scared into us. It comes from trauma. It comes from successes. It basically, we have formulated our brain based on how we have experienced life. And to be honest with you all, a lot of the work that I do with one-on-one and group clients is reprogramming the things that we can't change. So there's all these things that we can't change in our life. They've already happened. But if you have a messed up story around them, if you have something that you have made up about something that happened to you that's just really toxic and really not healthy, and you use that pattern of speaking to yourself because of this thing that happened that you put an attachment on, we got to rewrite that. Like that crap needs to be fresh perspective. So a lot of it is going back and rewriting, restructuring our brain so that we can have different thoughts, so that we can look at a situation that we used to think this about and go, I'm going to look at that in this way, and then actually give ourselves an opportunity to act in a different way. But it first starts with our thoughts. But most of the time, women do seek out self-sustainability. They want to be motivated. They want to be compelled. They want rules. They want accountability to the rules. They want to know what's right and what's wrong. They want a clear path to the destination. Like, get me from A to B, and I don't want to zigzag. They want a guarantee. Here's the issue. Freedom is simply an illusion when you're living in a prison. I'm going to say that again, and some of y'all need to write that, and you need to put it somewhere. Freedom is simply an illusion when you're living in a prison. It's an illusion that the woman who has the amazing physique and appears to be composed and confident and motivated at the gym, it's an illusion that she's free. What you don't see, and this is an unhealthy person, I think it is possible to live where I'm going to tell you can live and have those things, but most often what you don't see is how her commitment to looking that way and her achievement to look that way is now driven by her addiction to work out 2 to 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. that she has an obsession with counting calories. She has to weigh her food or she gets anxiety. She has bondage to the number on the scale. When she steps on the scale, it determines what she eats, whether she eats, how she feels about herself, how long she's going to work out, the rigidity of what food she will eat and what food she won't eat, and how it affects every single interaction that she has in social engagements and at home. You don't see those things. You don't see how she is affected emotionally and spiritually and mentally by trying to keep up this physique that requires a lot of energy and a lot of maintenance, right? So sure, it feels great at first. When you achieve that level, you're just like, yeah, this is awesome. It's so empowering. You feel very like good about yourself. You're getting a lot of validation. Many of you guys are waiting for that. Like, oh, I just want like the 6-pack abs. Like, I just want to look good in this and that. And you just think like, oh, if I can just get there, oh, then I'll once I get there, I'm going to stay there because it's just going to feel so good, right? But then you get locked into that prison. You get locked into that prison, just like a lot of women that we look at and we assume that they just have it all together. We don't see what goes on behind what it is that we see externally. So basically it becomes an all-consuming quest to maintain what's been created. This is where the illusion of freedom starts to be exposed for what it really is. So you're probably asking me, so what's the deal, Amber? Because what's the alternative? Okay, if we're not living in self-pity and just doing whatever we want, and we're not striving and trying to do what's right and what's, good for us, then how do we lose weight? How do we get healthy? Well, I believe that freedom is found in living in the middle of the road, living in the middle of these two extremes. What if we believed that it is possible to be healthy without it being all-consuming? What if we really believe that it's possible to be healthy without it being a struggle? Because the truth is that the purpose of our life is not to be obsessed with what we're going to eat. The purpose of our life is not to be consumed with when we are going to work out or how we're going to even get in the 5 healthy edge goals. Now, at the beginning, when you're getting healthy, that takes up more brain power, right? Because you're learning something new. And when you learn something new, it requires some thought, it requires some energy, it requires some restructuring of priorities, it requires some trial and error, so it takes some time. But then once you learn something, it becomes easier, it becomes simpler. You have to think about it less. It just becomes something that you do, and a lot of energy gets freed up because you've learned it and you've applied it, and it's just who you are. But our purpose in life is not to stay in that place with our health journey. If you are still striving and you've been on a health journey for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and you just feel like every day it is like willpower and motivation. Like, how am I going to get through my day? How am I going to make this happen? You're going back and forth between the two prisons all day long. I'm telling you that there is a way to live in the middle. Now, hopefully this straight talk has started to illuminate to you the two prisons so you can go, okay, don't condemn yourself. Don't feel guilty. Don't judge yourself because you're living in those two prisons. Obviously, I wrote about this because I know those prisons very well. Otherwise, I couldn't write about them. So I've been in those prisons, and I feel like I'm living in the middle of the road now. And so if I had to go through those prisons and go through the back and forth, it's okay if that's what you're experiencing right now. But let's talk about what it is, what the middle of the road is. The truth is that, the enemy of our soul wants to distract us. And I love to call out his plots because I feel like the Lord just keeps illuminating his plan. And it is very important for us to understand the tactic of our enemy. If you want to win a battle and you can actually get the strategy of the enemy, like what their tactics are and what they're going to do, you are going to win. So I believe like the Lord is illuminating this tactic of the enemy. All he wants to do, ladies, is distract us. It's like his number one thing in our health journey is to distract us. How many rabbit holes have you gone down? How many times have you gone around the hill doing the same old stuff? And then you go off and do something else, and then you come back and you do the same old stuff again. You're just distraction, confusion, overwhelm. He loves for us to stay in those places. We are not supposed to be obsessed with what we're going to eat. We are not supposed to be obsessed with when you're going to work out, what our butt looks like in a pair of pants, and checking ourselves out all the time. The enemy of our souls wants to distract us with those types of things and call our attention to those things instead of what's most important and what we're called to do. He wants nothing more than for us to turn inside of ourselves in terms of being consumed with the thought of what we think we need to achieve to be someone. He doesn't want us to turn inside of ourselves to do self-exploration and rewrite our mindsets and heal places that have been wounded. Oh, he doesn't want that. He wants us to turn inside of ourselves and think that something's wrong with us and we need to hide until we achieve something out here that makes us enough to be loved and accepted. So then we isolate. We're not really ourselves. We're trying to go for external validation instead of validation from the Lord. So he loves that. He just has a whole field day with it. He wants us to dive deep into our prison of hopelessness and self-pity and doing whatever our flesh wants us to do. And then he's fine if we swing to the other side and we're totally in self-sustainability. And basically we just keep going back and forth and we never question that there's any other way. And I can sense, that some of you are finding it hard to imagine being free with the body that you have right now. Because I said, the point earlier that I got my freedom first and then the blessings externally came after. I had to pursue my internal freedom, and then in turn, it resonated, it radiated, it poured out of me, and it became visible to people around me. Now, sometimes it was physical, like, wow, Amber, you look great, but a lot of times it was more of the energy that was flowing out of me, the peace that people hadn't experienced before, the understanding that used to be rigidity, the patience that used to be, impatience and like, I gotta go, like I got things to do. So it is an internal to external journey. Again, some of you find it hard to say, like, how do I find freedom right now when I'm so unhappy with how I look? I'm so unhappy with the fact that I'm spending so much time in these prisons. And your idea of freedom exists somewhere in the future. And that is a lie. Our freedom is not somewhere in the future. To be really honest with you, we are not guaranteed a future. Nobody knows the days that we have here. Nobody knows what our timeline is except God. So there isn't a place in the future somewhere where the excess weight is gone and that's where my freedom is. That is such a lie. That is such a lie. I have found in my own battle, and it has been a battle, it's still a battle. I don't ever consider the battle, because it's like the moment that we put our defenses down, like the enemy creeps in. All the time, like the moment I think I've got this, I'm like, I've got this. Like, this is just, okay. Now I'm in self-sustainability because I'm not leaning on the Lord and I don't have my guard up and I'm not watching. And that's right when the enemy will attack me with a comparison or a compulsion that I want to eat or I want to do this, and just crazy. So just letting you know, the battle never ends. I didn't want to hear that I had to go inside. Just like many of you don't want to hear that as well. Or you feel like, Amber, I'm already going inside. Like, what else can there be? I get it. I totally feel like that. I have felt like that. I just wanted another diet, ladies, just like many of you. I just wanted to know the how-tos. I just wanted a system, but it didn't solve my tendency to rebel. Okay. I have a tendency to rebel, have not follow rules, especially when God leads me down a path and it's like, I want to do my own path. So doing a diet didn't heal that. It didn't fix that. If anything, it agitated it. Diets agitate my feeling, my tendency to want to rebel. So in my health journey, I can't make it a diet. I can't make it right or wrong. I've tried to do that. Like, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. Unless I'm doing it onto the Lord in a fast and he is the center and he is completely my strength, it does not do well for me to structure my healthy lifestyle as a diet. Rules, do's and don'ts. Okay. I don't know. Maybe that resonates with you. Maybe it doesn't. I also, I just want to know how many calories. I used to live in a period where it's like, just tell me how many calories. Like, I'll figure it out. Okay, 1,200 calories, 1,400 calories, 16. Is that what I need to do? But what that didn't resolve was it didn't resolve my grief. It didn't resolve my loneliness. It didn't resolve my issues with rejection, which were all the reasons why I would binge eat at night. So I could be under my calories through the day. But when I hit that place of loneliness and I hit that place of grief and I hit that place of unforgiveness, I didn't care about the calories anymore. I just wanted to numb that. So it's like the very thing we ask for, it doesn't address what really needs to be addressed. I just wanted to find someone to love and someone to accept me. But that didn't fix my broken self-worth. That didn't fix my insecurities. That didn't fix my childhood wounds. Those things were still going to come up if whether or not I was with someone. So I hope you guys kind of see like these things for yourself. You're thinking that you need something for your health journey, but if you don't solve what's going on inside of you, it's going to come out anyway. It doesn't matter how many things you have set up externally. If you're not dealing with what's inside, then those things are never ever going to work. And then what the enemy does is he just wants to distract us and send us to something else, or have us look at another person and say, oh, that person must have it. Oh, that person must have it, and on and on. See, I just wanted to be attractive to the world. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to have friends and I wanted to have opportunities. And I thought that looking a certain way and being a certain way, was my way. But that didn't speak to the longing that I felt to know my purpose. So what I really wanted was my purpose. I thought that it would make me feel like I had purpose if people accepted me and I got opportunities. But if you guys have searched for purpose in other places, you can get tons of opportunities. But if you're not in your purpose, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel fulfilling. It doesn't feel energizing. It doesn't feel like you're in alignment when everything just clicks. I've been in a place where everything just clicks when I'm speaking, when I'm writing. I've also been in places that have been opportunities that I've said yes to because I wanted validation from people, right? But then you get there and you're like, ugh, this is so exhausting. This is so annoying. Why did I say yes to this? Because I didn't want to say no, because I didn't want to let these people down, because I didn't want them to judge me, because I wanted them to be my friend, right? So these are all just examples of what is underneath the behaviors that we're looking for and the willpower that we're looking for, that they just can't solve. So rebellion, unresolved grief, loneliness, fear of rejection, misplaced self-worth, having a lack of knowing what your purpose is. These are all examples of underlying issues that keep us teetering between this prison of hopelessness and self-pity and this prison of self-sustainability. And it doesn't matter if we're thin, if we're overweight, if we're healthy, or if we're struggling. If we skirt around these truths, then we're going to find ourselves teetering back and forth between the prisons, because those prisons allow us to avoid these things, or we can embrace them. And what happens is that when we embrace what is underneath, and we just accept that we're all broken people, these things become mile markers. I look at them as mile markers. So for me, it was like the mile marker of rejection. Okay, I got through that. And then I got another test for that. So then that was like a lot of mile markers. But then there was mile markers of like identity, like realizing that, wow, I had placed so much of who I was on what I've done, what I look like, who I'm friends with, what my achievements are. So that was like another mile marker. Okay. And then just dealing with the shame of my eating disorder, bringing that to light. So that was like another mile marker. So there's all these mile markers in our journey. And as you start to progress, what happens, ladies, is that we need to stop numbing as much. I really feel like the middle of the road is where we have opened ourselves up to what God wants to do in our health journey. And we have surrendered to Him this area of our life. He wants every area. And for some of us, we have surrendered areas to Him. Maybe it's with our children. Maybe it's with our marriage. Maybe it's with what we do as a vocation. Maybe it's with forgiveness, right? We've surrendered certain pieces. But God doesn't ask for certain pieces. He asks for all of us. And the enemy wants us to think that God does not have access to this area, that this is just an area that God doesn't want to be involved in. Although we are a temple of the Holy Spirit. So we are actually the temple in which God dwells. This is our vehicle that he operates through. So through us, through our body, through our mouths, through our eyes, through our ears, through our hands, through our lives, he carries out his purposes that he's destined for our life. So taking care of this temple, not degrading it, not abusing it, not checking out of our purpose by going to things that are making us feel good, because our purpose will always be uncomfortable. You guys realize that, right? What God has called us to is not comfortable. What God has called us to, we don't think that we can do on our own. Because if we did, then we would just do it on our own, and then we would give ourselves the glory. But that's not the way God works. God will do in us what we never thought that we could do within ourselves. And so he has equipped us to do what he's called us to do, but it's only through his strength that we're able to do it. So when we're coping and we're not taking care of ourselves, and we're not strong in our mental state, we're not strong in our physical state, so we're exhausted, we're super irritated, we're totally like washed aside by circumstances, we flow one way or the other, we have no control over our feelings. When we're in that space, we are all in our flesh. We are not depending on the Lord at all. Now, we can accomplish some things in this world, right? Worldly things we can accomplish in that space. You know, we can buy a house, we can start a family, we can get a job, we can buy a nice car, but it's all worldly stuff. It's not anything of eternal value. We're not impacting the kingdom, and that's really what we're called to do. So this journey needs to be turned over to him. That is why, you know, the coaching that I do with the group guys and the one-on-one, this is stuff that it's frustrating, because it's like you just want a how-to, but God has your plan, and your how-to looks different. So let me kind of end with boundaries, because I believe like that I live in the middle of the road within boundaries. And I look at it like this. Here's where my hopelessness, the prison of hopelessness is. And here's where my prison of self-sustainability is. I know both those places well. We've visited each other. And in between is my path to healthy living, the middle of the road. And there are boundaries on both sides of me that God has placed, that he has placed on my heart, that he has placed in my life, that keep me out of those prisons. It's everything from being in the Word, to what I have in my home and what I do not have in my home, to who I hang out with, to what I do to praise him and worship him, to how I speak to my daughter, to the words that I speak out loud, all of this, to working out. Working out is a way that I have processed so much grief in my life. God has given us a body to move, and one of the ways that we process anger and grief is through moving our body. So he's given me these boundaries, and these boundaries, I don't feel like they're rules, like they're a diet, or, you know, like a diet that would derail me to go to those prisons. If I keep it in the right context, I see it as love. Like there's love on either side of me. And just like I shelter Berlin when she crosses the street, or when she goes to school, and I talk to her about, like, you know, being kind to people, like just like I want to protect Berlin with boundaries of love, to keep her safe and to keep her prosperous and to keep her on the right path, God wants the same thing for me. So I try very hard to not look at those as laws or rules, but instead boundaries. So what are your boundaries? That's what I want to leave you with, you thinking about, is what are the boundaries that you need to live by? Don't grab onto 5 of them, and don't look around you to find the boundaries. Spend time with the Lord. Lord, what is my next best step? What is the boundary that will keep me out of this prison that I just keep visiting? Or maybe you're stuck in it right now. How do I break those shackles, Lord? What is it? And I promise you, he will give you one thing. It could be walking. It could be spending more time praying to him. It could be something random, like, what in the world is that? Okay. And you're obedient to that. And what happens is, in obedience, okay, we build trust. And we see in obedience, like, oh, this is actually working. This is actually, oh my goodness, I feel different today. This feels different. And so you start to build that, and your journey with God starts to become familiar. And as it starts to become more and more familiar, he will speak your next step and your next step and your next step. And then he'll trust you enough to let you see like 5 steps ahead. So you start to go, yes, okay, I can see it, Lord, I can see it. And then before you know it, ladies, you're living it. You're not obsessing about it. You're not checking the scale for your validation because your Father's already shown you your promised land and he's just taking you into it. So that's my prayer, is that we focus on living in the middle. It is not by your flesh. There's nothing that we can do in the flesh. God has like shown this to me over and over. I'm like, I get it, I get it, I get it. But I really don't get it because I struggle with it. Living in the flesh, trying to do things in our own strength. It's like the moment that I try to do things in my own strength, I am right into self-sustainability, trying to be perfect. And then when I'm not perfect, I'm like in self-pity and I'm like, why couldn't I do that? Like, oh, I should have more strength in this. I've been living this long. So I've seen that as I've started to ask God for more, there's been more and more pressure from these prisons because I feel like I need to do it in my own strength, because I'm just trying to do what I know. And he's like, Amber, I'm doing a new thing. And what I'm going to ask you to do is something that you've never done before. And you're only going to be able to do it if you walk close to me, and I'm going to show you how. And I'm going to tell you what the next step is. And I just want to give some hope to some of you that's what the Lord is telling you to do. Spend some time with him. Ask him for your next step. Okay. Now, some of your next steps may be that you want more support like this, like what we're doing in this Straight Talk Sunday. So I have 2 more spots available for my group, the group that's starting at the end of the March. It might be the beginning of April because I'm waiting for the right 2 women to come into the group. But this is an opportunity for you to approach your health journey from this angle. From the angle of getting out of the self-pity and the flesh and the desire, and this is just what I want to eat, Amber, getting out of I need a diet, tell me what to do, and finding out how to live in the middle of the road and how God will guide your path, not down my path. Okay, the destination may be the same. There may be some boundaries that are the same, but your path is different and it's going to unfold differently. And what's underneath some of your behaviors, okay, is going to be different than what was underneath mine, but they still have to be addressed. So if you want to do that in a safe environment, in a supportive environment, a place where you're going to be mentored and facilitated by me and 5 other women, please send me a message, reply back to any of the emails that you're getting. Some of you have my personal number. Many of you on here do, so just send me a text, and I would love to give you more information. If a one-on-one journey, you're like, Amber, I do not need a group, I need like you one-on-one, send me a message. We can have a free coaching session and we can absolutely see if it's a fit for you and I to work together. So that is it. Okay, ladies, I love each and every one of you, and we are just going to continue to do this journey God's way. So just keep listening to truth, walking in truth. I promise you that things will be uncovered that have never been uncovered before when you were in the illusion of the diet world. Okay, it's all an illusion. We've already been down that path. We know where that path goes. It goes to nowhere. God is doing a new thing. So be open to that new thing. Ask him, and I know that he's going to guide you. All right, everyone. Bye.